Well, folks, remember when they said 2 weeks for the lockdown? Just 2 weeks quarantine, that's all we need. Just self-isolation for 14 days. If we all do this, then everything's going to be good. We'll free ourselves of this terrible pandemic and we can all get back to normal. And then got extended to, we'll just have to make it another 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks, and now it's been 2 months, and now they're saying that it's just going to go on. And now we have reports coming from the World Health Organization saying that it may take 5 years before the virus is contained. Of course, within 5 years, folks, after 5 years of being in this type of a situation of this ridiculous social distancing, everyone will have forgotten what it was like to be anything else. And that's the way they want to do it, folks. And it's really gotten to a ridiculous extreme. You know, some of the pictures that we've got coming out of France, what we're seeing, the social distancing that's being applied to school children in France, I mean, this is sick. This is absolutely sick. This is psychological abuse of children. I mean, it honestly is, folks. And any teacher that is supporting this, honestly, needs to be taken out of the building and beaten to a pulp and never put in charge of any children again. Same as any government that is supporting this type of isolation of children. It's absolutely criminal that they should be doing this. Some of the saddest pictures I've seen are some of the pictures of life in the schoolyards. Of course, they're talking about sending the schools back, and there's talk that this is premature, that the schools may well be an epicenter for future outbreaks. And of course, now we're seeing a mystery illness appearing in the United States, a mystery rash, which they suspect may be COVID related. This is a respiratory disease, we're told, a respiratory ailment. And suddenly we're told that it may be causing this terrible rash in children. Must be COVID related. I guess everything's COVID related these days, folks. That's the way they're playing it. Any illness that anybody gets must be that clearing of the throat. That's probably COVID related. All this stuff seems to be COVID related now. That's the way it is. Perhaps it's something else. Perhaps it's radiation sickness, radiation poisoning. Who knows? But it would very much seem that they are preparing for the second wave and psychologically preparing the public for this second wave to be attacking children. You know, of course, they've gone out, they've installed 5G everywhere, and they've installed the Y-gig routers everywhere. So they've done this in schools. It's very likely that we will see some sort of an outbreak in children, and it's very likely it won't be from COVID. Also, the letter that I read out on the last show, I've been told, and I've seen reports, that this is actually a fake letter. Interesting, you know, there's been reports come out from the WHO where they're saying that they may find it necessary to go into people's homes. We also saw a report from, I think it was California, Ventura County, when the man said that it may be necessary to remove people from their homes against their will, and some people may have a problem with it. And yet now we've seen a report come out from Merced County that says, no, we didn't send out that letter. So I would suggest that it's half true and half fake. I mean, they've probably put that out there and circulated that to test the waters. But I really would suspect that this is what they're going to do, especially if they can lead people's minds towards the outbreak, affecting children the way it's being promoted, these rashes and these mystery illnesses and all the stuff they say is going to happen. COVID, folks, it's definitely COVID. That's twice I've cleared my throat. Look out. I may need to go in for testing. But the whole testing thing, speaking of testing, I got a call, I woke up to an email this morning from the local FM station, Triple M, Gold Coast FM, wanted me to come on. They said they'd like to have what did they say, something like a genuine argument or a constructive argument or a something or other type of argument regarding the NRL players refusing the jab. And they wanted to get me on to talk about it. And I thought, wow, this has got to be a hit piece. I'm being rung up by the mainstream media to come on to a breakfast show to talk about vaccinations. course, the mainstream media did a hit piece on me in February this year after I got targeted by something or other. And I'm sure they would bring this up. I'm sure that that's what this has really been about. Why they called me up. Just so they could associate anybody who doesn't want the jab with whatever conspiracy theory they can cook up. Because there was a report that was in the local news about conspiracy theorist Max Egan claiming the fires are being started with directed energy weapons, which was exactly the opposite of what I was saying. But because I actually mentioned it in one of the reports, that people were making these claims, they attributed me to making the claims, put out a hit piece on me. I got targeted that night. There was a big coordinated attack against me in February, so I suspect that it's probably related to that, why I've been approached by the mainstream media, but it seems quite remarkable that they would be doing that. But the social distancing and what they're doing to children, folks, there are reports coming out now, new rules that are applying to schools whereby parents can't enter the school ground. They've got to drop their kids at the gate, and the kids go into school, and then you pick them up at the end of the day at the gate. The parents aren't actually allowed onto the school grounds. And I would suggest that people start really questioning this. The schools have got your kids for 7 or 8 hours a day, 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, 6 hours a day. They're with their parents often. They're with the school teachers and the people at school often far more than they're with the parents. When they go home, they're doing homework and doing all the stuff that kids do. They might spend a couple of hours a day with their parents, but they're mainly in the influence of the schools. And with the new tracing program, they're hiring tracers, COVID tracers. You can be a COVID tracer, folks. You can be someone that goes out and hunts down people who may be infected with the virus. And this is what they're going to be doing with the children, folks. They're going to be training the children to look for certain signs of their parents not social distancing and stuff like this. This is what we saw in World War II with what was called the brown shirts. In World War II in Germany, many of the people were terrified of their children because the children would report them to the teachers at school if they were stepping outside the line. The children would come home and they'd be all part of the Hitler Youth, and they'd have the little brown uniforms on, and they'd be scrutinising their parents like little spies. I would suggest that's what's going to be happening with these kids at school. If they're bringing in this social distancing, this is absolute programming that's going on with these children, keeping them all separated from each other. As I said, psychological abuse of children. And, this is not going to go away, folks. If they're going to keep this going for 5 years, by the time those kids have gone through 5 years, the first 5 years of school, they're going to be a little spy service for the government that's going to be working in all of our homes. And they're not even going to know that they're doing it. It's very easy to program kids into behaving the way you want them to behave, especially when they're in a group environment and they're subject to peer group pressure and all the stuff that the kids get. So, it's very important that people be aware of what's going on here, folks. We're being led into a system of, complete and utter slavery, and it's going to be coming from all directions. And they're saying no. In most places, they're saying no, we're not going to make the vaccination mandatory. But of course, they won't make it mandatory, but they'll just make it so that you can't get in anywhere without the vaccination. They'll make it so you can't enter a supermarket, you can't get a driver's license, you can't travel, you can't do anything if you don't have a certificate of vaccination to show that you're not infected. You'll find that you won't be able to use any services at all. So no, we're not going to make it mandatory at all. But you may find it difficult to live or buy or do anything if you don't have this vaccine. And that's where we move into the Hunger Games type of society, where we've got those within the cities who are quite happy to get the vaccination, and you get those who simply refuse and they get locked out of society altogether. Now that's where it's heading, folks. And 5 years, 5 years, it's absolutely ridiculous that they could even consider drawing this out for 5 years. But of course we knew they were going to, and we knew they were going to also have a second wave. There's definitely going to be a second wave, folks. They want the second wave, they're predicting it, and I think it's going to be very likely related to electromagnetism, very likely related to the 5G, perhaps even related to the vaccines. And the vaccines, folks, Bill Gates out there pushing these vaccines. As I said a couple of shows ago. You know, if you or I were out there promoting this type of stuff and even administering vaccines, the way Bill Gates has actually done, he's orally administered vaccines to kids in India and Africa. You know, if you or I were doing this, we would get in trouble for, you know, promoting medical procedures when we're not a doctor. You know, we're not qualified to promote this type of stuff. We can't go out there as advocates for vaccine and be doing all the things that Bill Gates is doing. We would get in trouble. We would get arrested for doing that. There's a guy, David Noakes, currently on the run in England. They want to extradite him to France simply for that very reason, that he's offering medical advice to people when he's not a doctor. So how can this be that Bill Gates just gets away with this when nobody else can? You know, he's not a doctor. And when you look at his vaccines, folks, you're going to accept a vaccine from Bill Gates? Vaccines, he put vaccines in India a couple of years ago for polio, and he caused paralysis in something like 470,000 children. Could be 490,000. But at least 470,000 children were paralyzed by Bill Gates' polio vaccine. I mean, this is what this man does. You've got people like Boris Johnson made a quote. I can't remember the quote offhand. I can't remember verbatim, but paraphrasing it, the quote was something like, you know, he can't believe that there's no world leaders who are addressing the issue of overpopulation, how this is such an important issue. This is back in 2007. And now he's saying he wants to bring in vaccines and do all this stuff to save England and to save the people. You know, same as Bill Gates saying he wants to reduce the growth of population by at least 15% by a good vaccination program. So, you know, they tell you what they're doing, folks, and, you know, and people still go along with it. But the point is, you or I couldn't do this. You know, and just because Bill Gates has spent all this money on documentary films to present himself to the world as this great philanthropist doesn't mean he is one. You know, all the self-promotion that he's done, he's paid for all that himself. All the great films and documentaries and interviews and all the stuff he pays for all that, so that you have that idea of what he's like. You know, and you've got his that thing he's married to goes on TV the other day wearing an upside-down cross. I mean, you can't make this shit up, folks. You know, these people are as, you know, evil as they come. And the damage they're doing to people through this vaccine program is absolutely hideous. But that's the way they want to push it, you know. And like I said, the question is, why is this man even being allowed to do this? And why is this man suddenly someone who's giving advice to our governments and instructing our governments as to when this lockdown may be over? According to what Bill Gates says, according to when he's manufactured his vaccine that he stands to make trillions on. I mean, are we serious, folks? Really, you know, it's absolutely disgraceful. You know, the people of this world, the people of this country especially, we need to rally the people to express a loss of confidence in our government, folks. You know, the way Cuomo and all these parasites are pushing this lie, it's absolutely disgraceful. And if we don't nip it in the bud before it happens and before it's completed, we're going to be living in a system of open slavery that is going to be far, far worse than anything that anybody imagines Nazi Germany would have been. You know, we're going to be in a situation where our own children are taught to spy on us, where you need a vaccination to do anything. You know, you're going to be social distancing and keeping everybody apart from each other. No human contact anymore. All the stuff they're saying. I mean, you know, this rash may be COVID, so the kids are in danger. You know, male sperm may contain COVID, so you don't want to be having sex with anyone. You don't want to be breeding anymore, folks. We don't want any of that. You know, if you want your children, just let us know and we'll grow them for you in our exogenesis chambers. You know, you can see where they're going with all this, folks. And it's important that people start pushing back in the right way. You know, as I said, the best, you know, really the best way is non-compliance. But there are massive amounts of protests happening around the world as well. They don't want you to know that, but there are massive amounts of pushback out there in public, people in the streets. Even here in Australia, there's pushback. There was a guy who was arrested in Melbourne or Sydney not so long ago, just the other day. I intend to actually have him on for a chat tomorrow, so you can look forward to that one. His name is Fanos, and I can't remember his last name offhand. Sorry, Fanos. But I'm going to have him on to chat about that soon. There's another guy, a chef, who is quite well known on Australian television, who recently made a positive comment about David Icke's London Real interview, and he was instantly sacked and vilified and attacked by the media because you can't dare think outside the box. And I intend to perhaps catch up with him sometime in the next few weeks or a month anyway, and have him on to chat about stuff as well. Also, there's a whole bunch of flyers that are on my website now. Someone sent me a zip file full of flyers. There's about 14 or 20 flyers in there. And you can go to my website. If you go to the headlines on my homepage on the crowhouse.com, just click headlines. That'll take you down the page, and you'll see a link there that says powerful flyers, powerful COVID flyers for distribution. If you go to that page, you can download a zip file, and you can extract a whole bunch of flyers and print them up and give them to people. There's also a guy who is creating some T-shirts. He sent me a link and said, Max, can you help push these T-shirts? So I'll put a link there on my website as well, which takes you to his T-shirt site. He's got some Dissenters T-shirts, some COVID shirts in there. So, you know, good to support these people, and it's good to, you know, make a statement when you go out yourself. You know, if you're wearing a COVID shirt, or, you know, you're handing out flyers, or putting them in letterboxes, or whatever it is that you do with these things, leaving them on counters in shops, I mean, just leaving them places where people will find them. It can't hurt, folks. You know, it's really important that we wake up as many people as possible to what's happening, because we still can turn this around. I mean, there is a huge awakening happening, folks. You know, so many people simply aren't buying into this. You know, so many people have, like, even watched Judy Mikovits's documentary Plandemic. So many people are getting a wind of what Dr. Kaufman's been saying. I intend to have Dr. Kaufman on the show as well and talk to him about what's going on. You know, there's a lot of people waking up to what's happening, folks. And none of this can happen without our compliance. That's the thing. You know, it always comes down to our compliance. In all of these things that we do, it's always our compliance. But now they're going to be bringing out these, you know, tracers. They're employing people to be tracers. And like I said, I suspect if they can't do it one way, they'll do it another. But they definitely want to separate people from their children. You know, when you see this now, this mystery illness, this mystery rash, you know, who knows where they're going to play it, folks. But, you know, you want to do this for the next 5 years? Because, you know, 5 years? Come on. You know, if they're going to do that, well, you know, it's never going to go away. You know, and the talk of it's just conspiracy theory that they're fudging the numbers. Well, no, it's not. You know, they're saying it themselves that they're fudging the numbers. You know, you just got to listen to the politicians, listen to the doctors, listen to the powers that believe they be themselves, and they tell you quite clearly that they're fudging the numbers. You know, people are, you know, being labelled as COVID deaths when they didn't even die of COVID. You know, virtually anybody who goes into hospital and has any type of illness at all at the moment is being diagnosed as COVID, labelled as a COVID death anyway. So, you know, the best thing we can do, folks, is wake people up. But again, you know, get yourself to high ground as well. And by that, what I mean is, you know, get yourself some food supplies, get yourself, if you can, you know, around some like-minded people. You know, at least get to know your neighbours. You know, I've been saying for years, get to know your neighbours. These are your strongest asset in times like this. When this happens, the people around you in your community are your strongest asset. You know, in my very first shows I used to do back in 2008, I was saying that how important it is for people to get in touch with their neighbours and to develop some sort of rapport with these people, because you all need to stand together, because we're all in this together. Ultimately we are, you know. And the police and the military and the people that are pushing all this stuff, I mean, they're coming for you guys as well. You know, ultimately the food shortages that are coming, this is going to affect everybody. There's no one that's going to get away from this, and you know, they're just using you guys to oppress us, and they don't really care about you. They never have. All they care about is themselves, and it's important that people, you know, see what's happening. You know, this is worldwide fascism, and there are no winners in this. You know, and the reason there's no good cops, there's very few good cops that we can depend on, is, you know, look what happens to them when they do speak out. Look what just happened to that American cop who spoke out, did such an eloquent speech, and ended up getting sacked for doing it. You know, it was all good, and then 3 hours later he gets told to take the video down. When he doesn't, they took him down, you know. So, and good on him, he stood by his guns. You know, he stood by his guns and he quit, and he said, no, well, I'm going to leave that up for the reasons that I said when I made it. And good on him for doing so. But that's the situation, folks. You know, get yourself to high ground, but don't stop trying to wake people up. We need people to wake up, we really do, because if this rolls out, there's not going to be any stopping it. And that's going to be a dystopia that no one's going to want to live in. Even the people that are constructing the system, I don't even know if they realise what they're doing, because they're not going to want to live in this either, you know. But anyway, folks, I'd love to bring you something positive. Hopefully I'll find something positive soon. I hope you got something positive from that track that I put up, Inspiration. That was Louis Roberts who did that editing for me. He does a lot of video work for me. He travels a lot of those landscapes and stuff. That's all his original footage. He gets to the most ridiculous places and damages himself so badly to get the perfect shot. And quite humorous, some of his stories. But I'm really glad that people appreciated that music track for what it was intended to be, which was simply to provide some inspiration and to remind people of the beauty of our world and the beauty of our world's people, and how important it is to stand up for this. But anyway, folks, thanks for joining me for this short little broadcast today. I'll bring you another one probably tomorrow or the next day. I have a little bit more to say. And please take very good care until then. Thank you to all the people who send me so much information. Thank you to all the people who send me so many emails and so much kindness and so much love. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please take very good care until then. Ilakesh. Where are you going?